Hello and welcome to Nana's Crafty Home. My name is Tanya. Today's tutorial is going to show you how to make the triangle trio boho vest that you can find as a free pattern on my website. Extra large. You're going to need 2 of the comfy cotton blend for your main color A. Each of these balls of yarn is 7 ounces and 392 yards. So that is going to be your color A, and then you're going to need 1 ball of the comfy cotton blend for your color B. This one is shown in Cloud 9. My color A is whipped cream. So you'll need 3 balls total. You'll use most of it. I had a little bit left over of the whipped cream, but I used almost all of my color B color. You will also need a size J 6.0 millimeter crochet hook for this pattern as well. You will need stitch markers because we will be sewing our triangles together to create that vest shape. And then, of course, scissors and tapestry needles for you to weave in your ends. To get started, we're going to go ahead and get our yarn on our hook, and we're going to be working with color A to start off with. And I'm going to go ahead and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to go ahead and skip those first 2 chains, and I'm going to work all of my next stitches in that 3rd chain from the hook. So this last chain here, I'm going to begin with working 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and then I'm going to work 3 half double crochets in that same chain. Alright, so I've completed row 1 here. The skipped chains from the beginning of that first row are going to count as my first half double crochet stitch. So counting that, I have those skipped chains for my first stitch, 2 and 3, my chain 2, and then 3 more half double crochets for a total of 6 half double crochets, and all of your stitches are worked in that 3rd chain from the hook. So I'm going to move on now to row 2. For row 2, we're going to turn our work, and I'm going to chain 2. This chain 2 at the beginning of each row is going to count as my first stitch here and throughout the rest of my pattern. Now I'm going to begin working my half double crochets in a little bit of a different spot than I would normally. These half double crochet stitches are going to be worked in between the half double crochet posts from the previous row. So instead of working my half double crochet in those top 2 loops, I'm going to be working them in between the posts. You may need to feel with your 2 fingers, just kind of move them back and forth until you get your opening in between those posts. And they will open up a little bit if you do that. So you see here, I'm going to work that first half double crochet in between those 2 posts. Then I'm going to work another half double crochet in between the next 2 posts here. Now I've come to my chain 2 corner space, and this will be referred to as my corner here and throughout the rest of my pattern. In that corner space, I'm going to work 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and 2 half double crochets, all in that chain 2 space. And then along that second side here, I'm going to repeat what I did along the other one by working a half double crochet in between the next 2 posts, and then a half double crochet in between the next half double crochet post and those skipped chains from the beginning here. So I'm going to work my half double crochet in between those 2 stitches. Then my last stitch is going to be worked in the top of that chain 2. And I've completed row 2. And again, that chain 2 from the beginning counts as a stitch. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So just as a note, every row is going to increase by a count of 4 stitches. So I had 6 in row 1, 10 in row 2. You're going to be making sure that you have the same amount of stitches on each side in between that chain 2 corner space so that you're not getting lopsided as well. Really, the rest of this scarf is just, or the rest of this triangle is going to be a repeat of that same row that we just did by turning our work, chaining 2, working a half double crochet between those first 2 posts, and I will be working a half double crochet between each of the posts until I get to that chain 2 corner space. So just work a half double crochet in between each post, and then when you get to your chain 2 corner space, you're going to work that same stitch sequence, and that will be the same throughout for all of your corner spaces, which is the 2 half double crochet, chain 2, and 2 half double crochets, and then along this side, half double crochet between each of the posts, half double crochet between that chain 2 and the last half double crochet post, and then work a half double crochet in the top of that chain 2 for your last stitch. Now for an increase of 4 per row, I should have 14 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, chain 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So I have the correct number for row 3. I'm going to move on to row 4. And again, it's a repeat of row 2, that same stitch sequence. Chain 2, half double crochet between each post, two half double crochets, chain 2, and 2 half double crochets in that corner space, half double crochet between the posts to the end. Half double crochet in the top of that chain 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, chain 2, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So I have the correct number of stitches for row 4, and I'm going to do one more row in this color, and then we're going to move on to color B. But again, our stitch pattern is exactly the same as we move throughout this triangle. So you're just duplicating that same stitch sequence, increasing 4 stitch count for each row. And now for the next row, I'm going to bring in color B. So I'm not going to finish that last half double crochet, and I'm going to bring in color B and finish that half double crochet when I bring in that new color. So pull through your new color to finish that half double crochet. Turn your work, and for row 6, I'm going to repeat that same stitch sequence with my new color. And now, again, we are just repeating that row 2 throughout this triangle, and really now it's just about your color changes. Which rows are which color. And I'm not going to work through this whole pattern with you since it is a repeat, but I will put below what colors each row should be. You are going to make sure that you have a defined triangle here. This is clearly defined. And look at how nice, clean, and modern these half double crochet stitches look by working in between those posts. It kind of opens those stitches up just a little bit by placing it in between the posts. It eliminates that bar that you typically would get on the back side of your work by working in the top 2 loops, and it just gives it a really unique and fresh appearance. So very lovely, very simple, and yet somewhat unique looking. So your triangle, when you see here, this is a completed triangle. So this is the completed triangle, and you can see here that my color changes differ for the rows, and so I will list out for you at the bottom here which rows should be which color. If you're working in the self-striping yarn, you don't have to worry about it. Just keep going in your pattern to the correct size. You're going to be working up through row 39 to complete 1 triangle. So once you've completed your 3 triangles, we're going to go ahead and lay them down side by side so that we can measure and then seam those triangles together to create our vest. This is the way you're going to have your triangles. This is the way they're going to be laid out. You have your middle triangle. This is where this will lie on your back. So this is going to be your back triangle, and then the sides are your sides of your vest. You're going to want to place them with the wrong sides up, and we're going to go ahead and then use our stitch markers and place our stitch markers so that we can go ahead and seam these together. So placing these side by side, you're going to have your middle triangle facing down towards you, and then both of the sides are going to be facing up. So they're going to lay together like puzzle pieces, basically. And these side panels, you're going to want to come up and place a stitch marker through the top of that triangle and the top of this triangle through both. You're going to then measure from that top down 4 inches, and you're going to place a stitch marker through both panels. Now we're going to come down to the bottom. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to place a stitch marker the bottom of this triangle and the bottom of this triangle, and then we're going to measure 13 inches up from the bottom, placing a stitch marker through both panels at the 13-inch mark. And now we're going to repeat that on the other side, but before I do that, I want to show you where you're going to be sewing. You're going to be sewing from the bottom up to this stitch marker. Those 13 inches are going to be sewn together. You're going to leave this section open. This is your armhole, so you don't want to sew there. And then you're going to be sewing from this stitch marker up to the top, those 4 inches. So that's all you're going to be sewing on both sides. Now I want to come over here and repeat that same process with the other side panel. So again, stitch marker at the top of both, measure 4 inches down, place a stitch marker through both sides again, come down to the bottom, place a stitch marker through the bottom of both panels and then measure 13 inches up from the bottom and place a stitch marker. Okay, and you'll repeat the same thing for the sewing on this side. You'll sew from the bottom up those 13 inches. You'll leave the armhole open here, no sewing in that section, and then you'll sew from this stitch marker up to the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew my edges together, and I'm gonna start at the bottom here of that back triangle in one of my sides. And I've got my tapestry needle. I've loaded it with my color A, a length of color A, and I'm going to come down here, remove this stitch marker, and you're going to want to make this edge as flat as possible. You are sewing the top, so the bottom of this is going to be that top of the triangle, and it's matching up with the side. And you want this to be as straight of an edge as you possibly can get, matching those two ends together. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom and kind of match up what I think looks the best here. Again, I have my wrong sides facing me. You're going to want to do this from the wrong side of your work. This is going to be a mattress stitch. It is an invisible seam, so you won't be able to tell where your seam is at. Okay, now that I have matched it up, I'm going to come from underneath here, and I'm going to be picking up the loops from both sides of my work here. So I'm going to come down to the bottom and attach my yarn. And you're going to want to make sure and leave a long enough tail to weave in. So don't pull that all the way close to your work. And I'm just going to come back and forth, picking up one loop at a time here on either side. And just work back and forth. Working across from each other, picking up the stitches from both panels. And when you pull your yarn through, make sure that you are pulling through all of your slack yarn, but don't pull so tightly that you're going to pucker your work up. We're wanting to keep this as invisible as possible. We don't want gaps. We don't want puckered work. We want a consistent, even seam. You can see how invisible that seam is from the front side of your work. Nice and even. You can't even tell where it's at. And you can always come back if you leave a long enough tail, if you're not quite happy with how even this is, and of course it's kind of hard to tell because I'm attached to another triangle here. It's creating some issues, but I can always come in and place another stitch here to even things out if I'm not entirely happy with how straight this edge ended up being. But you're just going to continue on up through that 13 inches. Remember, this is that bottom seam up to the armhole, and so I'm just going to be doing this up to that stitch marker and stopping. And then I will work on the 4 inches between the top of the armhole and that shoulder seam. So now I'm working these 4 inches here at the top shoulder seam. using the same mattress stitch technique to create that invisible seam. I left a long enough tail for weaving in at the end. Go ahead and continue working on this panel, and then go ahead and attach your second panel using the same method. So now we're ready to go ahead and add the edging onto the bottom of our cardigan. And you're going to be working with the right side of your cardigan facing you, and you're going to attach color A to the bottom corner of the right side. So we're going to attach that. And really this is just simply to add a place for our fringe, to place it easily. So if you're not going to be putting fringe on your cardigan, I would just skip this entirely. But to get started, you're just going to chain 3, and this is going to count as your first stitch plus a chain 1. And we're just really working a fillet down the bottom edge. And what that is a stitch and then a skipped space, a chain 1, a half double crochet, a chain 1, skipped space, all the way down the bottom of your cardigan. So we want to place these evenly down the bottom edge. And so we're just going to be looking at our stitches and trying to place them evenly apart, looking to see where you would have placed a half double crochet if you were working just half double crochets down the bottom. So I want to skip this space here, and I'm going to work a half double crochet down here into this chain 2 space, or the chain 2 from the end of one of my half double crochet rows. And I'm just going to work a half double crochet and then a chain 1. And then I'm going to look at this again. I'm going to skip the end of this next half double crochet row and work a half double crochet into that chain 2. Now it may not always work out to where you're working into the chain 2 space, because you don't want these to be bunching up at the bottom. You want these to be evenly spaced and not bunching up your work. You don't want them too close together. So you're going to be evaluating as you work down your row. So we're going to skip this space here, and I'm going to work in this half double crochet, this end of this half double crochet row. And then chain 1. I'm going to skip this space here and work a half double crochet down here. And as you're working down the edge, I recommend that you every once in a while just evaluate where and how your edging is looking. Is it bunching up? Does it look about right? And then go from there. So I'm going to lay this down and see what this looks like. It looks like this might be a little bit close to, a little bit too far apart. You can see here how they're kind of pulling towards each other like this, because I don't have enough, I have too much space in between these 2 half double crochets. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to move that half double crochet just a little bit closer. And then chain 1, and then work a half double crochet, and then chain 1, work another half double crochet, chain 1, work a half double crochet, and again, let's take a look at what that looks like. So you see here, that looks a little better than what I had before. They're not pulling together like this. They're laying nice and flat. And so this is giving me a space to place my fringe. So your fringe loop is going to be worked through this chain 1 space at the bottom of your cardigan. So that's going to make it easy to place your fringe in these spaces. So continue working down evenly the bottom edge with your half double crochet, chain 1, and then go ahead and fasten off and then weave in your ends. When you finished your edging, you're going to work on your fringe. And what I've done here is I've cut 4 strands of yarn, approximately 16 inches of length, and one grouping of 4 is going to be one fringe on the bottom of my wrap. So go ahead and cut some lengths of yarn, and when you've done that, we're going to get started on attaching that. So with the right side facing of your fringe here at the bottom, you're going to take one of the lengths of your fringe, so a grouping of 4, and you're going to attach that to the bottom fringe here. And you're going to start in the first corner. You're going to fold the length of your fringe in half, making sure your ends are even with each other. And you're going to work into that first box, that first fillet, chain 1 in the corner. Doesn't matter where you start here. And you're going to take that loop and you're going to feed that through that chain 1 space. And we're going to keep our fingers in that loop and then feed the bottom portion of the fringe through that loop. Then we're going to pull on it, tug on it, just gently, till it tightens up. And that loop is nice and snug against the bottom edge. Then we're going to take another length and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to skip one of these fillet spaces and work in the next one. So again, feeding that through, and you can use a crochet hook too to pull this loop through. Keeping your fingers in that loop and then feeding the bottom portion of your fringe through it. And then just tighten it till that loop is nice and snug up against your fringe. And continue on, skipping the next chain space and working another fringe into the next one. Continue making your fringe all the way along the bottom edge of your wrap. And once you've completed that, I'm going to come back and show you how to double knot your fringe. Now we're ready to go ahead and double knot these fringes that I've added. And we're going to start in a corner. And your corners, your ends are going to be a little bit different than the rest of them. And I'm going to show you why here in a minute. So in order to double knot, you would pull strands from one of the fringes, from both of the fringes, and then knot them together. On the end, if you were to just pull out 4, let's say, which is what I'm going to be doing for the rest, and 4 from this one, what would happen is you'd have these lone, unknotted, double knotted ends that would look kind of funny. So on each end, I'm gonna take all of the 8 strands and then knot them together with these 4. So in order to do that, you take the first fringe here on the left, and then you lay those 4 strands from the second fringe, the right fringe, and lay it across the top. You're going to keep your fingers inside this loop that you're creating with this fringe. And then you're going to come around with your other hand and grab this right fringe, the bottom of the right fringe, and pull it around like so. You still have your fingers inside that loop. Now you're going to go ahead and bring that around and down inside that loop. And now we're going to go ahead and pull to make that second knot here. Okay, so we've made the first double knot. Now I'm going to take the 4 strands from this fringe that I didn't double knot and 4 strands from the fringe to the right of it. And I'm going to double knot these together using the same technique. I'm going to take my hand, put it underneath that fringe, take the right fringe and lay it across the top. Bring my second hand around and grab the bottom of that fringe and pull it around. And then I'm going to put it down the inside of that loop. And you can see it creates this little round circle here. You know you've done it right. So then you just pull on that to get that knot tight. And you've created your second double knot. So I have these 4 here. Take 4 from this fringe. Do the same thing. The left fringe goes over top of your hand. The 4 from the right fringe goes across. Keep your fingers in the middle. Bring your second hand over and pull that bottom fringe over and then down through the middle of that loop. And then gently tug. You want to get those knots even so you can manipulate the knot a little bit to make sure that your double knot is keeping even with the ones you've already made. And then pull till it's tight. So we've created the next double knot, and just continue using that same technique all the way down until you've double knotted all of the fringes that you have. And then when you've completed double knotting, you're going to come down here to the bottom and you're going to make the ends even. You're going to just trim the ends so that all your ends are even. So continue on double knotting all of these fringes. Now we want to go ahead and make our toggle fastener. And I have a little wooden toggle that I'm going to add here to the front of my wrap. And I've taken a length of yarn and gotten it on my hook. And you see here there's a loop, a metal loop down here at the bottom that I'm going to be working through. Where I'm going to be placing this button is this toggle is right here at the seam on the front of my wrap. So this is the front, like so. And you see the two triangles met here. This is the armhole, and this is the armhole over here. And I'm going to place the toggle kind of in the center of that seam, honestly, just by sewing it on. When I pull my yarn through, I'm going to make sure that I leave enough end to secure and fasten on the back side. And I'm just going to make several passes through that loop to make sure that that toggle is nice and secure. When I feel like this is secure enough and it's not going to go anywhere, then go ahead and weave in the end, weave in both ends to make sure that that toggle stays nice and secure. So you can see over here on the other side of your wrap, this is the same seam on the other side where we've attached the two triangles together. And at the top of this triangle here, I have a chain space at the top of that triangle. It's my corner space. And I'm just going to use that for a buttonhole. So I'm just gonna use that to attach my button. There's no need to add another loop unless you so desire. If you'd like to add a loop, you can certainly do that. But I'm just going to use that. It's going to be very secure and yet large enough that I can push that toggle through easily. Now we're gonna go ahead and work a round of single crochets around arm armhole to give it some stability. So we're going to attach our color A in the bottom of one of the armholes and chain one, and then we're going to just work a single crochet evenly around that armhole. It's just going to help give this armhole some stability and finish it off a little more professionally. So just work a single crochet all the way around and then slip stitch to your first stitch that you made when you come back around to the end, and then repeat that for your second armhole. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial today. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find the free written pattern instructions at my website. I will have a link below in the description of the video for you to head on over there. It will have all of the sizing instructions for adult sizes small through 4X, as well as child sizes will be coming soon, and I will have sizes 2T through size 12-14. So a big range of sizes for you. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel so whenever I post a new video, you'll get notified. Remember to follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and Tumblr. I love to hear from my readers and from the people who make my patterns, so please reach out to me on any of those social media platforms, and you can also email me at nanascraftyhome@gmail.com. If you ever have any questions or problems with my patterns, I'm happy to help in any way that I can. As always, thank you so much for being with me today. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.